America's beverage companies are investing in America. We're American companies, making American products with American workers in America's hometowns. We're local bottlers and manufacturers, operating in all 50 states, employing more than 275,000 Americans in good-paying jobs, delivering for the nation, because we believe in the promise of America and the people who make it great. Learn more at WeDeliverForAmerica.org. Paid for by the American Beverage Association.
From the kids to Aunt Sue. Keep your whole family connected on all their devices with crowd-pleasing gig-speed internet from Xfinity. Now that's simple, easy, awesome. Learn more about gig-speed internet or other popular plans. With Xfinity, you'll enjoy faster downloads and a better streaming experience. Go online, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Restrictions apply. Actual speeds vary and are not guaranteed.
The kind of old-fashioned cop who preferred working the streets and making arrests to taking tests toward promotion. He was the closest thing New York had to a Dirty Harry.
This is One Tough Podcast on the OG Podcast Network. Here's your host, Bo Dietl.
Welcome to One Tough Podcast. I'm joined here, like always, with my man Carlo.
Habadi. I just learned Swahili for
You
hello.
just taught me a new. Well, before let's introduce the guest, Carlo. Take it easy. Today we have a guy who's into linguistics. What the hell is linguistics, Carlo?
We're about to learn all about it.
His name is Dr. Rob Leonard, but he's got a pretty colorful background. He's one of the world's leading experts on forensic linguistics. He consults with law enforcement people on big cases. You know what? Welcome, Rob. But more important is, you go back with Sha Na Na?
I do.
You don't remember that. You're too young, Sha Na Na.
Oh, I know Teen Angel and Good Night, Sweetheart. I know all those songs.
Yeah, Teen Angel was my song. My brother, who organized us, my brother George, and choreographed us and assigned us songs. He gave me the death songs. Tell Laura I love her.
I love
Teen Angel.
Tell Laura I love her.
Bum, 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 bum.
Tell Laura
I need her. Tell Laura not to cry. My love for her will never die.
Great
Boom,
memories.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. And
What other ones?
choreographed so
Come on.
Well, Teen Angel.
Teen Angel. Teen Angel.
Answer me, please.
Wow.
Boom,
What
Yep.
great memories, man. Life was easy for me then. Now I got to worry about payroll every 2 weeks. I didn't have to worry about that.
That's what I think appealed to everybody. You know, we started Sha Na Na in '69, which was a period, with a lot of upheaval, the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And we were all at Columbia, and students had actually seized control of the school the year before. And it was nice to think back to when
you were
things
cool.
were...
You were a cool group. I remember you guys. And I was one of the guys on the other side. We were busting the heads of all the libs. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up becoming a cop, and I continued to bust heads. I'll never forget, we had an Honor America Day parade. I think it was 1970. Vietnam War was going on pretty heavy. And then we marched down Broadway. At that time, I went on the police department. And I was marching with I was a construction worker before I became a cop, an iron worker, laborer. And then all of a sudden we went to Pace College, and the kids were throwing bottles at us.
Really?
And then they locked the doors, the glass doors. Nah, that didn't work. We busted the doors down, and I punched the living shit out of everyone that I could see. And I was a police trainee. I wasn't a cop yet.
Well, I guess if people are throwing bricks at you, you're within your rights.
Well,
But,
today
yeah.
they don't have video cameras. They'd be locking me up.
Well, they'd be locking everybody up.
Yeah. But then you guys actually performed in the Great Woodstock. I didn't go, but it was really something that was happening. And the crazy Jimi Hendrix, you introduced him? Wow.
We opened for him, yeah. And we had met him just a couple of weeks before he had come to see us.
Yeah.
And
was he straight or high?
He was he was the nicest guy I ever met. And it sure seemed straight to me, interestingly. Yeah. And we were at a place called Steve Paul's Scene on 56th and 8th.
Steve Paul C.
It was such an insider place.
No, but it kind of resonates into the deep representation of my memory.
Oh, I'm sure you knew of it.
Well, we had the Peppermint Lounge in the early 60s.
Yeah.
Joey D's Peppermint Lounge.
I remember, sure. Yeah, we auditioned for somebody there once. This place was half owned by Andy Warhol, even. Well, not that I knew that at the time until we became sort of the house band there. And I finish with Teen Angel, Answer Me Please, and I look up, and they're not 8 feet away, is Jimi Hendrix jumping up and down on a chair, going, yeah.
Wow.
I said, Lord, take me now. I'm never going. It's never going to get better than that.
Yeah.
And I met him that night and was sitting drinking with him, and he showed me how to drink tequila. You know, I was a kid, and with the salt and the lime. Yeah, exactly. A guy came up, tried to sell him a hot camera. I mean, he was just the nicest guy in the world. He gave the guy a lecture, really. Mm-hmm. And what are you doing? You know, I mean, go put that back. I mean, your kids need you and stuff, and he gave him $20. Yeah. I was the nicest guy in the world. So a couple nights later, I go into our dressing room, which was about as big as this table, and there's this stoned hippie giving me a peace sign. And he's so stoned that he can barely speak. And he says, you guys. And I said, oh, thanks, man. You know, and I start walking him out the door. And just as I do that, our manager, my brother's friend, another 23-year-old, like gets all entangled. We both go down. And my manager picks up the hippie. Yeah. And then, like nothing happened, he just finishes his sentence. He says, you guys have to be at Woodstock. And I said to Ed Goodcall, our manager. How big was the group at that time? 12. I said, what's a Woodstock? He says, you'll find out. And that night, organized crime closed Steve Paul Scene forever due to non-payment of dues. And my mother was there, my father, our guitarist, 80-year-old grandmother was there. There was tear gas, and we never would have gotten to Woodstock because that was it. That was it. Steve
great story. So now the reason why you're here is this linguistics.
Good.
What the hell is linguistics?
Right. So I always joke, like when people say, what do you do? And I say forensic linguistics. So that's two words that, I mean, people have heard forensic. They have no idea what linguistics is. You put them together. Okay. So linguistics is no more or less than the science that studies language, typically human language in all its angles, the history, the relation of languages to each other, of dialects, of how, for example, these noises that I and you are making by pumping air through this musical instrument that we call our vocal apparatus, somehow these noises, you guys are hearing them as thoughts. And if you think about that, there's very few things in the world as different as noises and thoughts. Right. So how does this happen, you see? And that's actually the focus of the study of a lot of linguists. And my doctorate's in semantics, theoretical semantics, which is the theory of how we actually are transmitting and understanding or misunderstanding meaning through language.
But wait a second, I'm fucking lost here right now. You're saying by listening to someone talk, you could figure out something deeper?
Well, the point is that the amazing thing right on the face of it is that any of us are reconstituting the thoughts that we think the other guy had, you see? But then we also know that everybody's miscommunicating all the time, right? And one of the reasons for that is that
I don't miscommunicate because I yell all the time.
Right.
They know
if you yell loud enough, they're going to understand, right?
Yeah.
Right. Uh-huh.
I'm still baffled. I mean, are you getting this, Carlo?
I get it.
So the other thing we study, my other main focus is what's called, you're going to like this one, variationist sociolinguistics. And my two mentors, one was a giant in theoretical semantics and the other in variationist sociolinguistics. And that means that we study how people vary their speech, for example, according to who they're talking to.
Code switching, is that?
Like code switching, okay. For instance, yes. And also how dialects work and things like that. So that's one of the ways that we do linguistic demographic profiling. If we get a document with enough data in it, we can, opine, as the technical term, on where the person's from, where they lived, maybe, all sorts of things. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
My mentor, Roger Shai, who really founded this in the U.S., he was a distinguished research professor at Georgetown. He's written around 30 books for Oxford University Press on this. He's just the world's greatest expert. The FBI brought Roger the Unabomber's manifesto when they got it. You'll remember that.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. And all of the bombing-related documents that they had. And at that point, they were sort of thinking that the Unabomber was maybe a young mechanic who worked for the airlines, and it sort of made sense. So Roger looked at this, and he said, the Unabomber, the guy who wrote these things, is in his 50s. He has an advanced degree, but the advanced degree is not in the humanities. He was brought up in Chicago as a Catholic, and he has lived in the West, but he's not from the West. And he was right on all those things.
And that's what, coming off the written things that he wrote?
Yeah. For example, he knew that he had been in the West for some period of time, because one of the things he wrote was going out to meditate or something in the Sierra, which is a topographical feature that people refer to out west, kind of a mountain. But that was the only Western
the Sierra Nevada mountain.
That's right, exactly. But that was the only topographical feature that he used from the West.
Uh-huh.
See, and indeed, he had been in California. And he's talked about rearing children instead of raising children. And we know that at that time that was northern cities. That would include Chicago. Then he used misspellings, but they weren't actually misspellings. Roger made them as spelling reforms that had been promulgated by the Chicago Tribune publisher at a certain period of time, just when a guy then in his mid-50s would be coming up.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you
things like
understand
that.
this, Carlo?
So pretty much the way that a person speaks or writes is as uniquely identifying as a fingerprint or something like that.
Well, yeah,
Well, the difference between a fingerprint and that is the fingerprint doesn't change, see? Whereas your language is the sum total of all your experiences, you see? I mean, for example, in my family, my kids, they don't even know it. They use phrases from other languages because when they were growing up, I might use that phrase. And, they thought it was English, right? So you are your linguistic and experiential history. It's true.
Wow.
So we can tell a lot about people.
Yeah, well, I have been known for my linguistics they call them Boisms.
There you
go.
Well, there you Bo.
Like with Hillary Clinton, I thought she had a munchitation situation with Huma. Now, what would be a munchitation situation? That would be a lesbianic relationship.
Okay.
So, I did it for 34 years I used to do Imus in the morning, and it was, I used to make my own language up, and I use that they're getting very tumultuous, and all these words that I'd make up about.
Yeah, that's like a secret language. Like Miyazari, you remember Murray the K?
They call it Boism.
Yeah, no,
and
I
when
know.
I wrote my book, one of my books was called Business Lunchitations.
Okay, there you go.
And I talked about using these words, and sometimes you just slip out. It's not that I'm doing psychological; it's just like I fit them in.
Yeah.
And my vocabulary is not that advanced because I'm a high school iron worker, laborer, construction worker.
You're
cop.
doing okay.
And that's it. But I don't have the formal vocabulary training. I like those big words, but if I try to use some of those big words, sometimes I mix them up. So.
And that's one of the things. So imagine that we find in some document one of your attacious words. We'll know that they have heard you at some point.
You
know what I mean?
Definitely attribute it to me.
There you go.
Yeah. But it's interesting. There's this case that you worked on.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in. And I was there. I was in the house in Jean-Bonnet.
Really?
And after the murders, they had two college kids that were renting the place. And the Inquirer actually hired me. And they gave me $10,000 to go just fly out and get my feelings. And I read the autopsy reports. I was a homicide detective for years. And it's just something that when I read about you, what did you actually do with the Jean-Bonnet case?
Right. Well, what was your take on it?
Well, I honestly, and I know the kids sued everybody, but I still say it's the brother, and they were covering up for the brother. And the fact that the brother, a lot of people don't know, hit the daughter, the little girl, with a golf club, and she has a scar in the head where he whacked her in the head. That shows a little bit of violence in my heart. And then the whole thing about them covering something up like this, and then the handwritten note was definitely her handwriting was left on that pad with the yellow pad. And it's just, to me, my feelings, again, they'll probably sue me because my feelings are, I feel as though the brother done it. And I feel like I talked to Linda Fairstein, who was the former head of sex crimes of New York City. And when young boys grow up, it's called a sibling type rivalry thing, sexual exploration of sexuality. So in other words, when a boy's 9 years old, 10 years old, whatever, they're not actually having sexual affairs, but what they do is they explore. And with the little girl, I'm going to get a little graphic, is there was wood splinters like that, the paintbrush was shoved into her vagina. And that was determined. The paintbrush was broken in half, and then one half was used for the garrote around her neck. Then her injuries were consistent to her skull being fractured. And then there was the loud scream at 2 o'clock in the morning. They didn't find her. And then all of a sudden, your little girl's found dead. You then get on a plane the same day and fly out to Georgia. And the only way you talk with the cops, if you were interviewed together, and you would have the questions beforehand, and their attorney was a former prosecutor, the whole thing sucked. And the thing I really got pissed off was when her pajamas, there was DNA, touch DNA. That means right now, I touched your jacket right now. I just put my DNA on you. That was the determining factor for that stupid DA to say, we're releasing the father and the mother and the brother as suspects because we have DNA from someone else. It was touch DNA. The person who was folding the pajamas in the store could have had their DNA on it. I mean, it's just so ludicrous. And all along, when she died, Joe Monet's mother, I really believe the father and the brother know what the hell happened that day. And I really don't believe, when I looked at the house wasn't that big where you would know what's going on. Also, there was some fresh falling snow there. There was no footprints on that snow that night. And there was a light coating of snow there. And I just feel as though, and then all of a sudden the Swiss Army knife that was found in the closet where the little girl was the Swiss Army knife of the brother. And he loved it. He never would leave it alone. That was found in there. And then she had chunks of pineapple in her digestives, in the stomach. And the father said he carried it to bed around 9 o'clock. And it was determined with the autopsy that she ate those chunks of pineapple after 11 o'clock. And then the brother's fingerprints were on that pineapple bowl. There's too many things there. And that was my feelings on that. So how did you actually get involved with the case?
Well, number one, you are in, I think, almost perfect agreement with the 2 FBI agents that I've worked
Really?
with.
I honestly, this is my determination.
Oh, absolutely.
I never, and then they said that the kids sued CBS. They said something. I really don't care. This is my professional opinion. Everyone is a suspect when I'm investigating a murder. Yeah. And a little girl was murdered. I would never not keep the mother, the father, and the brother. Those three had motive. The motive, the kid's a little touched in his head, had assaulted her pride. The means were right there. Any opportunity. Sure. So go ahead.
So these 2 FBI agents from the Behavioral Analysis Unit, they were part of the group that reenacted, and of course they had been involved throughout. And Jim Fitzgerald was in BAU1, that's who I worked with at Quantico and on some cases, and we would do training together.
Is this the profilers?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that that woman with the bug eyes? The one for the FBI with the bug eyes? What was her name? She used to come to all kinds of conclusions. Wait.
So let's go back to, and Jim Clemente, who was in the Serial Crimes Against Children, BAU, and they recreated, and Jim was also a forensic linguist. I got into it, though, later because of this guy, John Carr, who
was one of the suspects.
Thailand. Well, he made himself a suspect.
Yeah.
And I think he was trying to get an airlift out of Thailand, one step ahead of the cops there. and the Boulder, Colorado folks airlifted him to Boulder because he said that he had been involved. And so one of the newspapers hired me to look at all of his back and forths with some professor who made like his life's work, John Benet, poor thing, and then the ransom note. And I looked at it and I analyzed it and I said, he didn't write it. And
no, her handwriting was
no. Besides that, leave that alone. Just the language, right? Because we don't deal with handwriting, and I never really understood that handwriting thing. But it's interesting what you say. So the newspaper kept begging me to say that he did it, right? Because that would make a better story. And every morning on Good Morning America, there was this handwriting guy who said, he did it. Carr did it. This is handwriting.
He was saying the handwriting on the note was Carr's?
Yeah. He says
that I didn't ever heard that.
Yeah. He said, I'll stake my reputation on it. And then the DNA came in, and of course, Carr had nothing to do with it. So they let him go. So they got a guy, from Thailand who was in hot water, and then he went. And there's more to that story. But anyway, that was my involvement.
But reading the note, you determined the fact that it wasn't him writing
That's right.
that thing.
Yeah.
Now, in reading that ransom note from your what's that called?
Linguistics. Linguistic logistics is fine.
Okay.
I like that. That's a new Boism. Good.
Linguistics, logistics.
Yeah, it's good.
Did you determine who wrote that note?
No.
Or what kind of person? Or what was the origin of the writer?
Well, already the FBI had done that, and I agreed with Jim Fitzgerald.
What did they say?
Well, they said obviously it was not a small foreign faction. I mean, if you're a small foreign faction, you don't say you're a small foreign faction. I think also there was a draft of it in the trash can originally. I mean, it was so clearly...
They took time. I mean, they took time to write that.
And the amount of ransom was exactly what his advance had been that he had given himself that year from his own company, the dad. Plus...
And hold on, there was one other good one. My mind starts to kick in a little bit. And the fact about him going back into the house and removing stuff, the father. I mean, come on. Your little girl's murdered. I would be like this, please... Detectives,
yes, of course.
Whatever you want, please help me find who murdered my daughter. Right. I wouldn't be getting on a plane flying to Georgia, and it was just horrific the way that whole case unraveled.
Yeah, I know. And Jim also noted that there were several things in the letter that were straight from different movies that they had either rented or were sitting right there.
Yeah.
So she dies.
My feelings
Don't
again.
Don't try to grow a brain, John. This was apparently straight from these movies, and that was another good link to them.
My feelings on that was like the old Cain and Abel. They found out the son was down there, whatever he was doing with her, and she screamed, the little girl. He panicked, crushed the skull. The skull had a terrible fracture in the skull. She's laying on the ground, gasping, whatever. They come down. What happens? What'd you do? You hit your sister. Now the kid's bleeding out, the little girl. And then they put the garrote to finish off like a dog.
You think they did?
Yes.
The parents?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That I never heard.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Save the other kid. That's my theory.
Yeah. Well, he could have just killed her too,
Those three people, okay. I can accept that.
No, I don't know. Remember this is your ballywick, not mine.
You have three people in that house with that little girl.
Yeah.
They know what happened.
Oh,
That's my point.
I'm sure you're right.
I don't disavow the fact that he could have put the garrote on her. Yeah. No, I can.
Or maybe after the fact, but see, I don't know. Again,
I can go along with that. But the only thing that just upset me was the fact that there was touch DNA that they determined to release them from being suspects.
Yeah.
You don't release anybody until you find the person that killed them.
And that's why even now, however many years ago, we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
I still see in the supermarket tabloid sometimes.
The real killer.
A Martian or something,
So what other interesting cases did you work on?
Well, I worked on this murder case. Sorry, one sec.
Sure.
With the Pennsylvania State Police. They gave me these two letters that surrounded the case. And the first was a stalker letter. It said, here's the proof your wife is blah, blah, blah. I had an affair with her, and I would have liked to find out of all our other sexual practices, but she made sure my fiance found out. She had an abortion and dumped me. Now I'm back in town, and it's time for payback. Okay, and this is found on the husband's windshield, so everybody in the family knew it. The cops know it, and everybody's scared. So then the woman's found strangled in her SUV outside a supermarket. Then as the investigation starts heating up, another letter is sent, this time to the police and the press, that on the surface, very, very different. It says, the guy's, I'm a serial killer. There's the fifth woman I killed. Yeah, I know you're snickering, right? Right, exactly. It's getting easier. I'm having an affair with her. She tried to break it off, so I broke her neck, okay? And they say to me, what can you tell us about whoever wrote these letters? And I didn't even know. I mean, I figured the woman was dead, but I really didn't know anything about the case. So my Columbia mentor, Benji Wald, and I, we analyze it, and we see that although they're really different in some ways, the later one is dumbed down and there's misspellings or misgrammar and stuff, they're really very, very similar. And they show a tremendous ability to tell a story with flashbacks and flash forwards and going out of the narrative sequence, et cetera, that is so good that you don't even know he's doing it at first. I mean, that's how good the guy is, both of them. And then I noticed that there was a link that maybe was going to get the judge to give us a search warrant for the main suspect's writings, which was a rhetorical device. I would have liked to have found out. She made sure my fiancé found out. She wanted to break it off, so I broke her neck. And I said, gee, that's interesting. Both these letters, yeah. So I researched it, and I found out that it's not a common rhetorical device. I went to Brigham Young University. They have this enormous catalog of rhetorical devices. And I said, no, I don't know what it is. So the judge said, okay. So they gave me all the main suspects' writings. And, of course, you knew before I told you that it's the husband. And we saw that there was a really good case to be made. And this is because of...
Now, they used this during the court test. You testified in the court as an expert on forensic...
Linguistics.
So it's not, you said, when I first started talking, I thought it was you listen to someone talk.
Well, that too.
And then, that's part of it also. Writing samples with the linguistics that are in there.
That's right.
Plus, then when you listen to someone talk, again, just the way they talk, that could give you signs of it.
Sure. Or we could do speaker identification, like who is this making this death threat? On a voicemail.
On a voicemail. You could then...
Well, sometimes we can narrow the suspect pool down. So
if I went like this, if I call up Carlo's house, I go, I'm going to kill you. You can know that I'm not from the Middle East and I'm not a terrorist that's going to kill Carlo, right?
It was not a really good ululation. Yeah.
No.
Nah, it's not how it works. But anyway, I get the point. Carlo asked me earlier, how do we know that we're not going to be led down the disinformation path? And because we always, of course, when I do trainings, and I've trained FBI and security services in England, Canada, Denmark, all over the place, I always say, you look at this stuff, but the most important thing is assume that everything is disinformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone's trying to go in the wrong direction.
I mean, it's like any investigation. So you look at stuff that doesn't add up. For example, there's a famous case of my mentor, Roger Shai, it's called the Devil Strip case, where this little girl was kidnapped, and the ransom note said, do you ever want to see your precious little girl again? Leave money, blah, 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 in the trash can at 6th and Main or something, on the Devil Strip at 6th and Main. And no cops, come alone, or daughter is dead. Daughter's misspelled. Cops is misspelled, like Keystone Cops, K-O-P-S. But precious is spelled correctly. So who can't spell cops but can spell precious also? And then even more important, because maybe he looked up precious, the punctuation is perfect. All the punctuation perfect. So we knew, I mean, I wasn't around for that case, but Roger said, so Roger takes the stuff, and then he says to the police, he says, do you have on your suspect list a well-educated man from Akron, Ohio? And they said, I think, Roger, come on, I know it's going to take a week for you to do this. What, are you joking with us? What are you, Sherlock Holmes? Does the guy walk with a limp, too? Was he in the army? Did he see service in India? Roger says, just look at the list. Sure enough, there was a guy, a very well-educated man from Akron, Ohio. And he knew that the person must have a reputation as being well-educated because otherwise he wouldn't have tried to dumb down. And why Akron, Ohio? Because he used the term devil strip. And he didn't even know because the strip of grass between the road and the sidewalk is called a devil strip.
Never knew that.
Never heard of that.
That's because it's only in Akron, Ohio.
Because people got hit by cars there, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, in railroading, hey.
I'm a fucking detective.
You know, man. Yeah, that's right. Because in railroading, the devil, whatever it is where a train will pop out and kill somebody.
Now, is this admissible evidence now? I mean,
yes.
It's not a perfect science.
No.
I mean, DNA.
Well, yeah, but
your altitude that's 1 billion to 1.
I get you, but that's assuming that the sample is perfect and not mixed.
Yeah, but can't we get, like, say if Carlo takes one of your courses, becomes a linguistic, what is it?
Logician, or I don't know.
What is it called?
Forensic linguist.
Forensic. And Carlo becomes a forensic linguist, and all of a sudden you're testifying in a case, and I bring Carlo in for the defense. You're testifying for me, the real detective. He comes in with Stevie Wonder defending him, right? Now, it's going to be him saying one thing, like my friend Michael Barton just came out with this Epstein guy.
Yeah, I know him, yeah, sure.
He's a good friend of mine.
Good guy.
He was a great, when I was a homicide detective, we did a lot of cases. He's a great medical examiner, but he's a hired gun. And now you're going to have 3 bones broken in the neck, but in reality, I've seen hangings where 3 bones were broken in the neck.
But
and now
that
he's
the same
giving
with DNA.
Well,
you have a battle of the experts.
No. You mean battle with the expert? But I mean that's something that could be either way. DNA is DNA. Like with the OJ case, that bullshit with the blood about being contaminated, that was OJ's blood. And there was they mixed it with something and changed it, and there was some sort of protein. That's bullshit. That's fact. But this is this science is it's the same science as, it's not as perfect as DNA.
No, I hear you. It's not a bench science where
But it's accepted, you said,
yes.
in these cases.
I've testified in, 10 different states and 5 different federal district courts.
But what is the guy coming now? What's the defense attorney? Say if you're stating for the prosecution.
Right.
How does the defense attorney go at your findings?
Right. Well, typically they get another linguist, right?
Like Carlo.
Yeah, actually, we were talking before the show, and he actually has quite a lot of insight into this. Because as we were walking through some of the stuff, he was saying, wait, so you mean this and that?
He studied.
And he was right on.
He's well prepared, Carlo. He's well prepared. I may lose him to become a
linguist.
I'll
be a very cunning linguist.
Cunning linguist.
Right. So, yeah, I've never heard that one before. It depends on the case. You see,
so the question now, again, to bring everybody back.
I'll give you an example, okay?
So, no, I want to just set up for the listening audience. The question I asked, his expertise is the best in this business. But what happens when the defense goes against you, guy?
Right. Well, it depends on the data. Because if we have so many idiosyncratic things in the known documents of one of the suspects, and they don't occur in any of the other suspects.
So you show your evidence
that's right.
that gave you the determinating factor.
Right. For example, in this Hummert case that I was talking about, the one with the letters, it turned out, to our amazement, Benji Wald noticed that, and we'd never seen this before or since, that the way Hummert, the husband, contracted things, like he never contracted positives. He would always say, I am. He'd never say, I'm. Okay?
Uh-huh.
But negatives, he'd sometimes contract. So out of something like 50 possibilities, he didn't contract one. And then these 2 letters, one that the jury figured was setting up, a straw man to take the blame for murdering his wife, and the serial killer letter, exactly the same thing.
Wow. Now, with the advent of this AI bullshit, analytics and all the big words and all that. I do know what they are a little bit, and we work ourselves with Carlo and I in the investigative field when we have to get information out of reams of tens of thousands of pages where you use AI or analytics to fine tune it down.
Right.
If I want to know when your name appeared in 60 Minutes in the last 50 years, boop, you do analytics, it spits out. Yeah. Are you working with analytics and AI on your findings also?
Yes. And for example, I had really good success in Southern District in New York, where I showed that a judge from another country had let the other side ghostwrite his decision. And for that, we had to crunch 250,000 pages of discovery in Spanish in dozens of different formats. And I hired the greatest forensic linguist in the world, a guy named Patrick Yola, and he was able to handle exactly that kind of thing.
And utilize AI on it.
Oh, God, yeah. He's a computer expert.
It would have been impossible to go through all that.
Although I must say, just to be sure, they went through, they did tests. You know, they took samples and went through by hand. They had teams of people doing it just to make sure everything was according to Hoyle. So we also are developing our own engine, which will accelerate what I do. See, at the end of it, you still need a human being.
You put it in.
To look, and maybe it'll come. So I do a lot of work for the federal government, and sometimes they'll come to me and they'll say, "Here's this guy. Is it this guy, right?"
Yeah.
And so we have to give them an estimate. Then they have to go upstairs. They have to get it approved. And maybe by the time all that happens, the whole thing is changed. So they'd be able to license my engine and do a first pass, you see? Okay, no.
Elimination.
Elimination. Let's keep looking around. Keep looking around. See?
Now, what if we had a terrorist that speaks language?
How do you analyze to see if a threat's credible, if it's legit?
Right. So the behavioral analysts, see, it's catching. Behavioral analysts.
Before you leave here, you're not going to be able to talk after me.
They're the ones who actually do threat level. So the BAU1 that I was involved with, they did counterterrorism and threat assessment. And my contribution to all this was forensic linguistically enhanced threat assessment. So it makes a lot of difference if you think that this threat, this was actually a real case, to the White House, going to bomb the White House, was sent by the head of Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb or by a 14-year-old boy in North Virginia.
That believe that he wants
to. You see. And you can tell that from an analysis.
Even if it's a foreign language.
Then you get foreign specialists. But another murder case where a guy was convicted of strangling his wife and two little boys, he sent himself threats for, I think, around 6 months, 7 months before, death threats before he killed his family because, he was hoping. And Batten was involved in that, too, by the way.
Who was Michael?
Yeah. And for prosecution like me. And these threats, and one of the things I do when I do trainings in threats is look at this. Okay, so we have all of these aspects of enhanced threats and more serious threats, and he has detailed knowledge of when somebody's going to be somewhere, and now he's cursing, and now he's frustrated, and all this, except it was all chimera. It was all make-believe.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So they were looking at it as a threat assessment, but if they come to the idea that maybe do an authorship first, maybe the wife and kids would have been, maybe the wife and kids would be alive.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong because nobody knows about forensic linguistics. They only got me when they realized that the husband, the father, was the chief suspect, and they also got something off his computer at work that was one of those threats. He said it was hacked in.
Wow.
But I was able to demonstrate it was.
Criminal enterprises? Like, would your technique work for, code breaking, drug dealing gangs? They tend to use code words and things like that. Are you able to determine, and they're not really moving tables, but, drugs?
Yeah, I was just in, the New York Times just interviewed me about hold the ziti. It was, one of the code words
2 boxes
for
of ziti.
Exactly. And it's funny because I said to them, it's true. I've had a lot of cases where for some reason they're always talking about lasagna or ziti, and, but.
That was the Lucchese family, guys.
Yeah, and they messed up because they said they wanted 2.5 boxes.
So anyway, sort of what we do is code cracking. But yeah, then you really have to have some contextual stuff. You were asking me before the show about civil matters.
Sure, yeah.
And like that one that I was talking about with the 250,000 pages of discovery, that was $14 billion civil suit.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was hired by Apple to fight both Microsoft on the one hand and Amazon on the other to preserve App Store as a trademark. And I said it wasn't generic, and that's the big deal in trademark. And the judge agreed with me, but Apple just dropped the case. I think after they spent $80 gazillion, they said we'll take our chances.
We're actually in the tri-state area right now, and where actually is the place that specializes in this type of forensic?
Well, the first and still the only actual face-to-face graduate program in forensic linguistics is at my university, Hofstra University, which is Hempstead, Long Island, on Long Island. And we are the center in the Western Hemisphere, really.
So there's nothing on the West Coast, anything?
No. There's.
Is this catching on more and more?
Oh, yeah. And there's centers and graduate programs in England and in Spain, in the Netherlands.
How long is it going to take Carlo to be an expert on this if I send him to
I'll
school?
accelerate it. But we have these week-long intensive courses, which are reprises of what Jim Fitzgerald
he eats a lot of pizza, Carlo.
Oh, good. Okay.
When he goes to these
but no
things.
ziti, I hope. So when Jim recruited me to help him with these week-long boot camps in forensic linguistics, I would go down to Quantico, and he was already doing this. He was training his own agents, foreign allied agents, people from Secret Service.
So he's like
and
the
stuff.
godfather of this?
Well, he's the behavioral and investigative godfather.
Well, who started it?
And then Roger Shai, who started years.
Is he still
before.
alive?
Yes, he's in his 80s.
And he's the godfather of
absolutely,
this.
absolutely. Yeah, and he lives in Missoula, Montana, and still works on occasional cases with me. And as I say,
so you learned from the godfather.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
So you're like an underboss.
That's right. Well,
Yes.
if you must, I like metaphor, but I'm not sure I like that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
the last time I used that one, I got in trouble because I was up in Rayo's Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
And I had Kenny Langone up there, and Dick Grasso, and Dick, what's his name? Dick Hertz. What's his name?
Dick Fold.
Dick Fold from Lehman Brothers. And all of a sudden, so I went on Imus in the morning. I used to do him for 34 years. And I'm saying, well, who'd you have up on your table on Thursday night? He says, well, I had so-and-so, so-and-so. I said, and I had the underboss of UBS, Joe Grano, really American hero. So all of a sudden it goes out. All of a sudden he gets called into the chairman's office. He goes, Baudino saying you're the underboss. Well, if you think about it, his boss, he's under the boss. Where was the connotation of organized crime?
You should have said he was the cardinal instead of the pope, right? Okay, so wait. so we would do these week-long courses. And then when Jim retired from the FBI, he said, hey, let's take these courses to Hofstra. So even before I had the graduate program, we have two, one in the fall, one in the spring, intensive week-long things. And it's both for my graduate students and for FBI agents.
Well, you should be at
people.
John Jay College of Morons and Assholes.
We do a lot of work.
I'm
with
not
them.
very impressed
so
with John Jay College.
To the forensic linguistics intensive course.
Oh, definitely.
You know why I don't like John Jay College? Because when I was a young cop, rookie, they sent me there. I was there for 6 months. I went to classes. This is during open enrollment. I was the only white guy in the classroom. Everybody had afros and was all African Americans in there. And I showed up maybe twice. I took psychology, sociology.
What year was this?
Probably 1970.
So things probably haven't changed.
And then all of a sudden, I'm in a classroom oh, well, we were conditioned about this. You don't know what condition's about. When your father was born in Germany and his belt buckle was imprinted on your ass every day, if you look the wrong way at your mother, that's being conditioned. When you had to work from when you were 8 years old, delivering newspapers, cleaning factories out, that's being conditioned. Don't run that condition crap. You go out and get a job. And it was almost going to go into fisticuffs. So I didn't show up anymore. All of a sudden, I opened the mail up. I obtained a B average. And I never showed up. So that's why I call it John Jay College of Morons and Assholes. So when someone has a college degree from John Jay, I go, yeah.
So they should have flunked you.
They should have. I didn't even show up.
I'll write them a letter.
Yeah. Well, I never got a degree from them, so let them wipe their ass with their B average.
Just some extra training that
no, it was wanted? Classes, yeah.
Oh, so
they went on getting the free education. They went on getting these bullshit degrees, and they were their BA and their MBA, their doctorates. You know, you can do with those degrees, wipe your ass. I want somebody that has actual world experience.
So you've had a lot of different jobs. That was you were describing, of course, right?
I've had many jobs.
Yeah,
I've run many companies.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of things.
No, I mean in the early days. Like, I was a forklift operator.
No,
and
when
then
I was a
rented
kid.
refrigerators, and then I was in Shanana, which was quite a difference.
No, I ironed my shirts with Niagara spray starch. Always had to have wrinkled shirts, clean the house. I did everything. But then when I got home from school, I had to sweep the factories out. I was a short order cook. I was a busboy. I was a grill. Work ethics was what my father beat into me. Work hard, you make money, you don't take money other than you work for it. And that's a very simple way of life.
Well, I had a lot of jobs, too, without them beating me, but you're making me remember. Yeah, I was, as I say, forklift operator. That was good. Unfortunately, I was the worst forklift operator they had. I kept knocking down well, anyway, we won't go into that. But I escaped to college.
So what would you give advice to some young listeners that might be interested in getting into this field?
Well, it really is something that a lot of people are realizing, especially with true crime being so popular, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a forensic files of that Hummer case that I was talking about. It's
why don't I call my friend that runs Investigation Discovery, get you on there with your own show?
Yeah, there's actually, well, that's fine with me. There's actually a nice thing on one of the cases on Investigation Discovery, like a 4-minute clip of me explaining forensic linguistics. But a good way for people to get involved is they can take this week-long course.
Wow.
And
they can show interest. So there's a week-long course to get you taste your
that's right.
Get
and
a taste to see your interest.
In the spring, it's with Jim Fitzgerald that I co-teach with, my old FBI partner. And in the fall, it's with a fabulous Danish forensic linguist who works all over the continent named Tanya Christensen.
And how much does it cost somebody?
$947 or something
Carlo,
like that
I'm not
for a
paying
week.
For you to go.
For a week.
All right, I'm not paying.
Give him a discount.
But I tell you what, I learned something today. When we were talking about it before we did the show, and Carlo was explaining what it was, I still didn't get it. Now I truly get it. It took us almost an hour for me to get it, but now I understand linguistics.
Yeah. Well, and you're a detective, and you're a very, seasoned detective. So you see how, we're doing the same thing that any other investigative science does. It's just that we're dealing with sounds and things on a printed page.
Yeah, well, I mean, detective work has really changed since I was around in the 70s. I mean, we didn't have DNA then.
Right.
We didn't have what you have now, even with ballistics and all that. But still the basic idea of motive means an opportunity, incredible witnesses,
right.
and interviewing people as far as using what we call ruse. Is that the word?
Yeah, a ruse.
Yeah.
So in other words, that was a very great tool. Now they're talking about taking that away from the detectives because they feel as though people are being tricked. I mean, look, you take that away, and then all of a sudden you're not going to be solving any cases, and people are going to be walking around killing people.
I was once in Copenhagen. We were having a conference.
Did you go to Red Light District over there?
No, I think you're thinking of Amsterdam.
Oh, sorry.
But so anyway, no. So and I was sitting around the table with an NYPD detective who is a graduate of our MA program, and 2 Danish seasoned homicide detectives, and they're dealing with biker gangs all the time. American biker gangs have their outposts there, and they're the big drug dealers. And RCMP and British detective, comparing notes on what you're allowed to do and not do, you see. And, for example, in Canada, if I remember correctly,
Mr. Big, that's a...
They can't lie. They can't do a ruse. Wait for it. Except to build, a rapport. Oh, you're divorced? Oh, yeah, I'm divorced too. But they can't say, I have a video of you doing it. Wait.
Or you can't say, I have another witness. That's just going to echo what you say.
But you can have an attorney there. But if the attorney says, Carl, I don't want you answering any more questions, he'll say, look, we're doing a courtesy to have you sitting here. If you tell him not to answer questions, you're going to go up on obstruction of justice. No, we don't do that here, see? So you give a little, you get a little, that kind of thing. And the Danes, they were still in shock. And these are hardened, I don't mean hardened, but they're really experienced guys. They said, you can lie? See? So, things are different all over the world.
It's coming this way. In the very near future, where cops are not going to be able to interrogate without ruse.
Well, we do a lot of work on confessions and valid confessions and things like that.
Well, Robert, we're going to wrap it up.
All right.
You've really been an interesting segment. What we do every week, we do what we call a punk of the week, something that bothers you, person, situation, or whatever. And we ask our guest first, and then Carlo go next, and I go, what is bothering you, your punk of the week?
Can't think off the top of my head. I mean, there are so many. No, so you guys go. Maybe it'll give me something to think of.
I would have to say ABC News is my punk of the week. They sat on the Epstein story for 3 years and was just exposed yesterday.
Yeah, and we had the fella on from
James O'Keefe. He previewed it last week, and he said there was a big announcement coming, and
we saw it on the news.
We saw it today.
Well, my punk of the week is our governor, Andrew Cuomo, who I knew his father very much, loved his dad. And my punk of the week is this governor letting this criminal reform bill go through and implementing these things that are going to make all the people of New York State and New York City going to be more susceptible to be victims of crimes. And for some reason, people don't care. Look, I'm not for a kid going to jail for a pot cigarette, spending time on Rikers Island. But there are certain situations when you have kids getting shot on the street and the guy gets locked up with a gun and you give him no bail, and it goes on and on and on and on. And that's my punk of the week. Mr. Governor, you have to understand, these people are there in this state, and you have to protect them. And the first one that gets killed, well, one of these punks that get out on your bail reform, I hope they send a lawsuit up your ass, and I hope they go after you personally for everything you got, because what you're doing is you're making these people become victims on the street. That's my punk of the week.
All right, Dr. Leonard, where can people find you if they'd like to learn more about your program? And
Hofstra University, Leonard, Hofstra University.
What is your handle? How can they reach out to you?
Sure, RobertLeonardAssociates.com.
RobertLeonardAssociates.com,
right. Yeah.
And they can find out more information. Then they can also look into Hofstra University.
Absolutely.
And what do they call it again, Carlo?
I think I have it written down.
Forensic,
the Institute for Forensic Linguistics at Hofstra University.
Yeah. And you can look that up and tell you what, it's another field. How much can you charge on this? Anything you want, right?
Well, I mean,
come on.
Well, what do you charge?
Anything I want.
Well, okay, then.
Okay, that's the same thing. Thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Dr. Leonard, for being here. You can find us. We're on social media. We're at One Tough Podcast on Twitter. Bo is at Bo Dietl on Twitter and at The Real Bo Dietl on Instagram. You could also send us any emails, comments, questions, suggestions, onetoughpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us at wabcradio.com. And we'll see you next week.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.